Namaste, world raisers. Amina and Roger here. Who has been to the cinema already watching Doctor Strange? Our day is today. Woo! And yeah, with that, let's step right into part number 2 of this wonderful interview with Dr. Vineet.
So the three subjects are firstly astrophysics again, where if you go into the deep realms of astrophysics, there is a theory of infinite universes,
Yes.
which is again parallel with what you said.
Right.
I've spoken about it with Abhijit Chawda on this show. The second is a historical theory that I've learned from studying ancient human history. We've only started writing probably around 10,000 years ago.
Right.
The first human being, the first Homo sapien,
I think it's about 80,000 years ago.
I think this form of us was
Like Homo sapiens,
Homo
sapiens, I
sapiens.
think it was about 80,000 years
Okay.
ago. Yeah.
There
Because
is-
they started moving out of Africa around 60,000 years ago.
So then I think it's like the precursor to that.
Probably.
You know, which is the ancestor to Homo sapiens and Neanderthals
possible.
was there around 2 lakh years ago. But my point is there were stories
Yes.
of history that happened even in that period.
Yes.
And so much of history is lost because
Yes.
you know, in these kind of timelines, even skeletons erode, even rocks erode.
Definitely.
So we don't even know where to begin the archaeology.
Right.
That's just the last 2 lakh years, probably.
Yes. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, imagine what has happened, you know, even before that.
Yes.
And the third subject I'd probably like to highlight is spiritual studies again, philosophy.
Right.
Where at the end of the day, that question of who are we?
Yes.
Every single spiritual school in the world pretty much says that you are a part of God and your job, other than your actual material duty,
Right.
is to reconnect with God. That's why they say, oh, be a good person, treat people as you'd want yourself to be
Yes.
treated, do good work, try, you know, growing
That's great.
spiritually, try learning about God because you want to reconnect with that. And the theory about God is that imagine that all of us have universes inside us. God was just this one creature which was like us once upon a time, but it evolved to the degree where it could create many universes through itself.
Right.
So think of God as existing like a person, but to understand its own nature, it had the ability to take a cell, take it away from its brain and place it maybe on its palm and observe it.
Yeah.
Now the palm could be one universe where that
Right.
little cell gets to experience sadness,
Right.
happiness,
Right.
food, sex, trauma,
Yes.
sweating, fitness, all these human concepts.
Yeah.
Meditation, spirituality, philosophy, knowledge,
Yeah.
and then slowly rediscover itself. Which is why when we're kids, and I'm sure this has happened to you when you were a kid, you looked at your hands, you looked around you, and you said, "What is this wood?
Yeah.
What do these colors
The
actually
curiosity.
mean? What is happening here right now?"
Yeah.
Everyone has had those questions at some point in their childhood.
Exactly.
And then over time, as you grow older, you kind of get lost into the realms of materialism,
Right.
the realms of tension, the realms of Western sciences.
Right.
And you forget these questions of what is my
You stop
actual
asking.
purpose.
You may still have those questions, you just stop asking, you just take them for granted. Right? I mean, we use mobile phones today. How many people understand the principle or that they work on, right? Yesterday, the WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram were, I mean, they were down, so to say. Why? We don't really understand what happens. So we just stop asking questions. But that basic curiosity is what we need to inculcate in.
I think that's why planets and these celestial bodies exist in the first place, to remind humankind that, you know, there is this massive
Yes.
thing
You're not
out there.
alone.
Yeah, that's so much larger than
And
you.
you're like infinitesimal in front of
Yeah.
the universe.
Yeah.
That's why I said, this entire universe is just one breath of Mahavishnu. Who are we? We are not even existing for the entire length of this universe.
You know that there are speculations in cultures all over the world that there was some sort of alien input in the human
Right.
story.
Right.
So I just pulled out Google.
Oh, is
It
that
was the
what we just
cognitive
watched?
revolution that happened at around 70,000 BC, when sapiens evolved their imagination. Because in order to discover science, first you have to imagine science,
Right,
which is what so many scientific minds today forget. And by scientific minds, I don't mean scientists.
Right.
I mean the people who say, "Oh, I'm a man of science," and they run science pages. They criticize philosophies like this.
Yes.
They don't understand that science is basically research.
Completely.
You're trying to find something that already exists.
Yes.
But in order to find that, first you have to imagine it.
Yes.
And they kind of let go of imagination. They let go of the inner child in that search for research papers.
Yes.
Research papers are beautiful. They're weapons for the future. But they're not everything.
Completely.
There's a seed of thought from which research papers emerge.
Definitely.
And you're a doctor yourself. You've done your MBBS. You work in pharma right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure research is a huge part of your life, but you've kept the child alive inside you.
Yes.
And I've seen this with philosophers, authors, scientists. All these people keep their inner child alive. It's all these pseudo, oh, look at me, I'm a cool science. And these are the people who forget to keep their inner child alive. So anyway, the cognitive revolution happened at around 70,000 BC. The agricultural revolution happened at around 10,000 BC. So there was a span of 60,000 years where we were
nomads.
We were experimenting, basically. We were trying to figure out the world around us.
Right.
But they say that So I think I read theories about the cognitive revolution. It's linked to something called behavioral modernity. In terms of the behaviors we have today. Why do we find someone's ass hot, boobs hot? Why do we... why are we attracted to a certain person? Why are we thinking in a certain way? Why do we chase money? Why do we like tasty pizzas and burgers?
Right.
All those things, all our behaviors in the modern day are caused because of that period of 60,000 years. That's what evolutionary psychology is also based on. But there are theories that say that no one knows why it began.
Right.
So some people link it to psychedelics. Like Graham Hancock is this historian who links it to ayahuasca. He says that we discovered ayahuasca. We started experimenting with magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's why we could imagine.
Suddenly, imagination. The minds opened up.
Yeah, which might be true. I've had an ayahuasca experience in my life and I've been a different person since.
We never had.
So, and we have Som in our culture as well.
Yes.
Right? What is Som?
Oh yeah, the Som.
Som is a very, very misunderstood and misrepresented chemical, actually. I would say, as a doctor and somebody who's working in pharma, I would say Som was not a psychedelic. Som was an invigorant. Okay.
Like Viagra.
No, not really. So the adrenaline rush that comes, right? So Som was probably something which gave you the adrenaline rush,
Like
which
coffee?
was better than that. So actual adrenaline, the chemical adrenaline.
Okay.
So Som was something that triggered the release of adrenaline in your body. That's what my theory is. And in fact, a lot of people had in earlier days, they had done research on what the Soma plant could have been. And there was a very close contender, which was, some people had the view that probably it was a mushroom that had psychedelic properties. But the descriptions of Som and the way, the entire 9th mandal of the Rig Veda is dedicated to Soma. One whole mandal of Rig Veda. Because Soma formed a very important part of the ancient culture and we don't understand it, unfortunately.
Maybe this was a part of the cognitive revolution.
Precisely. But Soma, it actually gave you the adrenaline rush. And if you read the 9th mandal, you would find the hymns that talk about Soma being pressed out of stalks. So it was a creeper, most probably, or a shrub, whose stalks were used, not the fruits or the flowers
Like
or the
mushroom
leaves.
ki dandi.
We don't really
Yeah,
know
mushroom ki
what it
dandi,
is,
probably.
so it's
But
like-
these are like jointed stems.
Okay.
That's how the description is. So they're jointed stems. So there are nodes in it. So probably it was a longer than a mushroom, a plant. And these stalks were used. The stems were used. They were crushed. And the juice that was, extracted, it was filtered in sheep's cloth. Okay. And then and this juice that came out was slightly bitter. These are all the descriptions in the Rig Veda. Okay. And therefore it was mixed with either milk or curd to be made fit for the consumption of the gods. And when was it offered to the gods? The scriptures talk about Indra drinking pots of Som, ponds of Som, lakes of Som, so much Som he drank. And when did he do it? Not when he wanted to relax, when he wanted to go to war. So it does not make sense to have a psychedelic or an intoxicant when you're going to war. Maybe, one small bit of an alcohol, can probably release your inhibitions, but not pots of it, right? What will you fight? You will lose your judgment. So this was an invigorating substance that probably gave an adrenaline rush to the person who was drinking it. And that is why, the pupils are dilated. When you have an adrenaline rush, your pupils are dilated. Your breathing is faster. Your muscles get more oxygen. Your blood vessels are dilated. So you get the energy to either fight or run away. The fight or flight reaction, it's called in medicine. So the body prepares you to do either of these. Now it's your call. Either you can run away, for which you need energy, or you can fight, for which you again need energy. So body's preparing you for it. And soma was a plant that allowed you to get that adrenaline rush just by ingesting it. So like, a lot of athletes or sportsmen take steroids, or, they take chemicals. And ephedrine is one of those chemicals which is banned. This again is supposed to give you an adrenaline rush. So soma was probably something similar.
Some natural parallel of ephedrine.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think what people don't understand about botanical sciences, and this I learned from Dr. Mark Plotkin, one of the world's most well-renowned botanists, so much of ancient botany is now lost. What I also found out from a Himalayan explorer on the show, that's why I love doing this podcast, because cool knowledge like this just stays with me. What I found out from that Himalayan explorer was that there are a lot of shrubs and plants hidden deep inside the Himalayas, probably under the snow, that are still not rediscovered.
But
you talk to the locals and they have some knowledge about those
of
plants.
course,
Not complete knowledge, but they have some knowledge.
Of course.
They know that this plant does this plant does that. And those plants have probably not even been discovered by science yet. And there is research ongoing about those plants. Now, maybe Som could be derived from one of those unknown plants.
Definitely. I think we've just lost the identification. It definitely still exists. And there's very interesting descriptions where it's found. It's found in the mountain regions. That is why it's difficult to access. So it's found in the Himalayan mountains, and it probably extended right from Tibet to Afghanistan, the range.
Like the story in Ramayana.
Of the Sanjeevani. But Sanjeevani was a different herb.
What do you think that was as a doctor?
Not really sure, but again, there's not just one herb that's described in the Ramayana. Hanuman is actually sent to bring 4 different herbs.
Okay.
And he goes twice to the mountains to get the herbs. And so one of these is Sanjeevani. But there are 3 other herbs that are described in the Valmiki Ramayana. We just get so the Ramayana that we know is more of the Ramcharitmanas version. Valmiki Ramayana has many differences, which is the actual original depiction of the Ramayana. So there are 4 different herbs that Hanuman goes to get. But soma was till recently, and it's very interestingly, the Persians, the Parsis we have in Mumbai, they have a Hauma ceremony, which is similar to the soma ceremony that used to be done by the Vedic people. And the Indian and the Iranian, the Vedic and the Iranian civilizations developed almost at the same time. But they were probably antagonists.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They were enemies.
They were enemies, more or less, yes.
Wow.
Because for us, the Asurs are the demons, right? For the Parsis, for the Zoroastrians, Devas were the demons.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were probably enemy tribes. But they grew in the same environment. They were from the same stock of people, same languages, the Indo-European languages, Indo-European culture. That's why the stories are similar. The language is very similar. And the Parsis even today have a Hauma ceremony, okay? And again, it involves extracting juice from a stalk, from a plant, which is again filtered. There's very specific apparatus to do that. And it's a proper ceremony. It's the same Soma ceremony in the Vedas, okay? And again, this stalk that they use for this, till recent times, it used to be imported from Afghanistan. So there was a very specific geography where soma was available. And that is why we've lost the connect. And since partition, of course, we would not have had access. And I don't think a lot of people were even interested in finding out, which is very unfortunate that a lot of people in India, we turned so westernized immediately right after independence that, being educated in English became the parameter for your knowledge. And all the knowledge that the regional languages had, the literature that regional languages had, all the knowledge in Sanskrit, it was forgotten. Today, how many people know Sanskrit? But if you can read Sanskrit, if you can understand Sanskrit, and you can read the scriptures, there's so much more research that can happen, right? So I think that's where Soma comes from. It's definitely, a lot of people again interpret it in a different way, that it was a metaphysical concept. It was more about, the joy of discovering yourself when you're in meditation. It may be so, because Soma has a dual entity. It's also called, Soma is also the name of the moon god. Chandrama is also called Soma. But there's definitely a plant, because the entire ninth mandal is dedicated to its extraction, its filtration, and it's so poetic. The Rig Veda is very poetic, beautiful verses that talk about the sieve that is used to filter the extract. It's supposed to have 10 holes, probably. That's why it's called the 10 maidens. And you see the Parsis use a similar apparatus, a similar sieve used today. So even though soma extraction and the ceremony did not survive in our country, it did survive in the neighboring civilization.
Yeah, and also speaking specifically about Asuras, what people don't understand is if you actually get into Vishnu Puran or just the study of the Puranas, Asuras aren't painted as completely evil.
Yes.
They're grey.
Yes.
Just like us. If you think you are white, that's not true either. You're also grey.
Completely.
So it was just probably two warring tribes which are lost in that 70,000 BC to 10,000 BC time period.
Completely. And again, coming back to science, there were also the ice ages that happened in between. And a lot of history got lost because of the ice ages as well.
So one second, like the earth has cooling periods and warming periods. We're currently in a warming period. That's why global warming is catching on as much as it is. We are just accelerating it through pollution, etc. etc.
It is bound to happen even otherwise.
Yeah, but the earth has, scientifically speaking, warming periods and cooling periods. What I do know is that the ice age was the peak of a cooling period, and then therefore it melted away, which began the warming period.
Right.
What I want to ask you is that, are you saying that we actually, probably our culture, like Indian culture, went through a warming period even before?
Definitely. So, and again, Ranveer, there are very fascinating verses in the Rig Veda, and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who's a well-known freedom fighter, he was also a scholar. And he wrote this amazing book called The Arctic Home of the Vedas. So, according to him and his analysis of the Vedic verses, some of the depictions are possible only if these people lived on the North Pole or in the Arctic zone.
Wow.
Because there are descriptions of nights being 6 months long, days being 6 months long, which happens only at the poles, right? There's descriptions that of multiple dawns emerging, and that's a phenomena apparently that is witnessed at the pole. That sky gets lighter one arc at a time.
As in the colors keep switching from one part of the sky to another.
Yeah, as in the brightness starts coming one arc at a time, because you're at the top of the globe. So you see a circle of light emerging. Dawn is a circle of light.
Okay.
So and similar verses he's interpreted, and I don't have any comment on his interpretations, but he was a well-known scholar, right? And according to him, he believed that if not the entire tribe of Vedic people, at least the rishis used to live there at the North Pole or in the Arctic zone. So that is where the civilization used to be. But when the ice age happened, people had to obviously move southwards towards the equator.
Just want to stop you there and throw in some science.
Yeah.
If people are thinking that these kind of descriptions are beyond their perception, I want to highlight someone called Wim Hof, who's called the Iceman, who has learned to use pranayam and breath control to control body temperatures.
Right.
And he's known to actually visit Arctic regions, places with a lot of snow, sub-zero temperatures, and roam around shirtless there. Very comfortable. And he trains people in these breathing techniques and how you can alter your own body temperature.
We see sadhus doing that at Kedarnath and the Himalayas.
He attributes it to what he's learned from Indian culture.
Right.
And breath work.
That makes sense.
So, go on.
But not even that, you don't really need to get into that as well, because before the ice age, the poles had a much more temperate climate. They were not covered with snow. So the poles had a very, very habitable zone. So the northern pole, at least southern pole, I'm not really sure what happened to Antarctica, but at least the Arctic zone was much more habitable. There was a possibility of civilization being there. But as the winter would have started, people would have started migrating. And people say that, how could the ancient civilizations have traveled so far? Vedas are full of descriptions of rides on boats in the oceans. There are gods like the Ashwini Kumars who are specially prayed to when people are going out into the sea. So, and of course, there are descriptions of long journeys, etc. So, a lot of people, a lot of scholars believe that, it was a habitable zone. When the ice age started, probably people started moving downwards. And again, there's a very fascinating story of a theory, rather. There's this out of Africa theory of the origins of humanity. It is believed, geneticists believe that, the first human beings came out in East Africa. the proper Homo sapiens, the chromosomes that we have for Homo sapiens, they emerged first in East Africa, and from there humanity started moving out. So now, very interestingly, if you go back into Indian history, genetics, you see that the hominids, the African origin human beings, they came to India around 60,000 BC. Okay, and a lot of genetic studies show that it was these populations that were living in India that they started migrating to the other parts of the world. There would have been branches that went to Europe. There would have been branches that went to the northern parts, but most of these did not survive because of the Ice Age. So it was the branch out of Africa branch that was in the tropical zone that survived, and it is responsible for populating the entire world. So people who came out of Africa into the Middle East and India, the tropical zone, these were the ones who further migrated into other countries like Russia, Siberia, and America and Russia, they were connected before the Ice Age. They were connected with the Bering Bridge.
Strait.
Yeah, it's Bering Strait now.
But it used to be
It used to be Bering Bridge. And this is a scientific concept that, human beings passed from there into the American continent. And that is why you see the Native Americans, they look so much like the
Japanese.
Exactly. Like the Japanese or the Chinese, the Mongoloid races, right? So,
and also, it's not just the Native Americans. That migration happened all the way down to South America,
Yes.
into Chile. You see
Yes.
modern Chilean people.
Yes.
You see so many South Americans.
Yes.
They are, like, I'm talking about the ethnic South Americans. Because
Yes.
there was also a lot of European influence,
Yes.
African influence.
True.
But you have this whole Mongoloid-looking
right.
part
The
of South
original
America.
inhabitants of the continent. And this happened just about 14,000 years ago. So imagine, India got people living here at least 60,000 years ago. Whereas this actually became the new world because human beings reached there about 15,000 years ago, the Americas, So between this duration, a lot of stuff happened. There was ice ages, and whenever there's an ice age, water is drawn back from the seas, from the water bodies, right? Because it gets frozen. It gets frozen, so the sea levels go down. Imagine if there's a period when there is about, say about a 5,000 or 10,000 period, the sea level is down. And there's civilizations that spring around the coasts. Civilization always starts near water sources, right? It's always along the rivers or along the coasts. Biggest cities in the world historically have been along the coast or along major rivers. The entire Indus Valley civilization was around Indus and Saraswati River, which was now discovered. So these civilizations which would have emerged in those coastal areas, as soon as the meltdown started, water level started rising. And these places would have got flooded. And that is the reason you have the story of a global deluge in all world mythologies.
Atlantis.
Everywhere, Dwarka. And these are still later.
City.
But even the earlier religions, Mesopotamia, Sumeria, African native mythologies, the Native American mythologies, right up to Philippines from South America, everybody has a story about the global deluge. Because it clearly points out, there's a scientific thing, right? That ice ages do happen, meltdown does happen, and the water levels do rise.
And we've still not discovered so much of even recent history. So imagine how much
Yes,
ancient history is not
exactly.
discovered.
Let's pause here for 2. Wow, there was a lot in there.
Woo. A lot of information. But so the foundation and what I love most about this talk is that if you can analyze correctly, they're talking about the origins of human beings on this planet as they evolved from Neanderthals into Homo sapiens. And then if you can truly grasp and contemplate and understand, even just materialistically, even if you're not spiritual and you can't comprehend that we're all coming from one source, like an infinite creator, for example, like even just materialistically, we're also one family. We have one origin, right? So we're coming from one source, even materialistically, and how humanity kind of spread all over the globe. And then, as history, evolved, and then we started separating ourselves, mostly psychologically through through language and form and identity, right? We identify ourselves as this people because this is where we're from and this is what we call ourselves and our country and our skin color and all of that, when really we're all coming from the same source, no matter which way you investigate it. So we can come together, as one family. So yeah. So love how he's touching on, once again, of course, the ancient wisdom and just the knowledge that is revealed in the ancient scriptures, right? So, knowing all of this information. So, yeah, great talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was too much for me in there. I already forgot 99.9%, but I did not forget the beginning. He was talking about the cells and the universes and the body. I didn't understand that.
Mm-hmm. That's just another way, I think, to comprehend and perhaps contemplate, the origins of the universe. And then so you can kind of for example, think about God. So if God was a form, like a physical form, but mastered the ability to, to like pick out a cell of his body, because even a cell, if you're looking at it through an electron microscope or something, it's, it kind of looks like a universe, right? Like, remember the book by the Dalai Lama, A Universe in a Single Atom, right? It's just so incredibly complex, right? And then you're getting into all the particles within the atom, right? So imagine that each cell in your body could be a universe. So that's another way to maybe conceptualize, Mahavishnu, whose every breath, is exuding universes through each one of his pores, kind of like the cells of a body. A cell is like a small spherical shape, right? And yeah, universes, right? So not to separate universes from God, all universes in a certain point of view are contained within God, right? So for example, Krishna, everything is contained in him, and the material universes just encapsulate a fourth of his creation, all of the infinite number of universes, right? So we're talking about just mind-boggling. We can't even comprehend. Like,
Cool.
yeah. So,
Oh yeah, and they talked about the soma plant.
Oh yeah, so I did come across that just reading, some of the texts and books on Hinduism and whatnot. Yeah, so I always kind of equated it with, Amrit, I think in Buddhism it's called, right? So just the divine nectar is kind of how I, comprehended it, but it sounds like, that some of them were taking it before going into battle, right? So kind of like a stimulant, sort of thing. So I'm not sure if my interpretation was correct, but I have heard the name, right? So when they were first saying Som, of course I knew it as Soma because in the English books it's spelled with an A, right? But Dr. Vineet started pronouncing it as Som, but then towards the end of their discussion on that, he was calling it Soma.
And then you made the connection.
Yeah, so, I knew right away it was Soma, but different pronunciations, right? It just got me all confused.
What? Not just you.
Yeah, but anyways.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, we're gonna watch number 3 now. So please join us. Thanks for watching.
Because they haven't talked about spaceships yet, so that must be...
Oh, they did in the first.
Spaceships?
Yeah.
They talked about aliens.
Yeah, how they travel from one realm to another, back and forth.
I want to hear more about it. What kind of spaceships? Like maybe in the Ramayana, how Ravana had a spacecraft of some sort. He was flying around. Remember?
Oh, I thought he was pulled by horses. No? It was not a carriage?
No, that was a different character. Ravan had his own...
Who are you talking about?
Ravan.
The bad guy who kidnapped Sita.
Yeah.
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 Oh, I thought he was pulled by a carriage.
Well, I think he has more than one vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Another part, I think he had like some sort of energy-powered flying craft.
Oh wow, I don't remember that. Cool.
But anyways,
Now we know why.
spaceships. Stick
Amazing.
around. So thanks for joining us. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Let us know what you think in the comment section. Are we all coming from one source? Are we all just one big family? And perhaps me and Sabina, were Hindus in our previous lifetime. Because one of our previous lifetimes, obviously, we're all,
And you were Westerners.
Could be. Oh my gosh. So anyways, see you. Part number 3.
Oh my god, that's not what I wanted to do.
Peace.